To change templates on any string that you've created, you can access one single form to do that, and that happens to be called the design data form. If you expand any of your network strings or any of your road strings, when you right click, you're offered the opportunity to access the design data form, as you can see here. Let's have a look at how this may work on Sydney Court. So we're going to right click design data form, and in here, the very top option in here allows us to go in and change the template that is being applied. You'll notice here that we can actually apply a different range, and what this actually allows us to do is going to apply multiple templates along our string. What we'll do is close down the design data form and take a copy of the template that's being created here and apply a slightly different version, which is maybe slightly wider. So we're going to head over to the template editor by right clicking on templates, click template editor. We'll take a copy of this template just simply by going file, copy template to local, and we'll call this 30-foot residential. All we need to do now is very quickly just change these values from 12 feet to 15 feet. And we now have our 30-foot wide design. We're going to click OK. So on Sydney Court, we're going to apply the larger or wider template for the first 200 feet. Then we're simply going to transition back to our regular template for the last 100 feet, or from 200 to 300, meaning that we've then got our regular template being applied. So let's see how this works. We'll right click on Sydney Court, click on the design data form. Then in there, we can go in and begin to change things. So what we're going to do is we're going to say for the first 200 feet, from -1000 to 200, the template is now going to be our 30-foot residential. We're going to click on Add Update. Then we're going to copy the entry that's already created in there. We could click on Add. In fact, we'll go Add just to show you what you can do. And we'll say from 200 to the end, maintain our 24-foot residential. We're going to leave this merge option as blank and click on Add Update. And then we click on Auto Model, which basically says go and update my total model in the background. Now, if we have a look at what's happened there, not only has our curve returns been adjusted to suit here, but we actually have this transition. However, the transition is only happening over a sort of a nominal value here, probably around 230 or maybe that 30 feet. Whereas we want the transition to be happening over the course of 100 feet. How do we do that? Well, what we need to do is to actually have 3 template entries. So to start off with, the first entry is perfectly fine. We're saying maintain our 30-foot residential template as far as 200 feet. But we're then saying between 200 to 300, we'd like you to have a transition. So this is where we need 3 entries. This is our second entry now. So from 200 to 300, we would like you to transition into the 24-foot residential. But because it's a transition piece, we have to say merge is yes. Now let's have a look when we click on Add Update how this looks. Notice how we're now getting a smooth transition. So merge is this a transition, yes or no? If I now add a third piece, which says from 300 all the way to the end, notice how we're putting in very large values here to cover the end. Maintain 24-foot residential. This is no longer a transition, so we leave merge as empty. Click on Add Update and click on Auto Model. So I've now been able to transition between 2 known locations over a set range. Now, if I wanted to transition to a value which maybe wasn't available, for example, maybe 250, let's just see what happens, or maybe 255. Let's put 255 in. So we're going to leave this value as it is for the first entry. The second entry will transition to 255, and then the last entry obviously needs to match that. Now, the problem is we don't actually know if 255 has been transitioned to. So we actually have to turn on some special line work to help us see where this is actually happening. So we're going to click on Close here. And we're going to go to the CSD Surfaces, right-click, Toggle Display. We've had a look at the Surfaces tab. We've had a look at the Models and Line Work tab. We haven't reviewed the Section Sample Lines tab. The Section Sample Lines are where the cross-sections are being drawn. If we turn on the display for Sydney Court and then click OK, we are only able to make adjustments or changes to the design cross-section wherever one of these lines occurs. So if I wanted to make an adjustment to say this at this particular spot here, or transition to this particular spot here, or even just here, I wouldn't be able to do it unless I have one of these sample lines available. So what we're going to do is to head back to the design data form for Sydney Court, right click, open up the design data form. Now, if I want to make an adjustment at this particular spot, or say, or maybe transition to this location here, I don't have a sample line available. To add the sample line, I click on the little add button down here, click add single station, and I can manually click. I'm going to turn my snaps off here because you'll notice I'm snapping. That is automatically added in. So if I wanted to transition to, say, for example, 287 exactly, I can change that number, hit refresh, and now use that position as part of my control for my template transition. So we're going to click OK, and in here we're simply going to leave that first one as it is, tell the next one that it's going to transition to 287, add update, and then the last piece will be transitioning from 280, or not transitioning, will be maintained from 287. Now, because I added that 287 in, that transition is occurring exactly where I want it to. So these sample positions are extremely helpful, or insert stations positions are extremely helpful to enable me to make a change at a nominated position of my choice, rather than where the sample positions originate from, which in this case I think is every 25 feet, which only gives us certain points of control. Let's now close down the design data form and then toggle off the display of the sample lines by going to toggle display, section sample lines, turn them off, and then click OK to finish.